Hi friends, I'm Dr. Saurav Arora, and today through this live Facebook, we're going to discuss about a very relevant topic in homeopathy. And I found it very challenging yet interesting, one of the oldest topic in homeopathy, the case taking. And yes, this case taking is important from a clinician point of view, from a teacher point of view, from a researcher point of view also, because this is the scenario, this is the case which will give you insight, education, experience, and further insight to work upon a patient. And today we are going to learn the art of writing evidence-based case homeopathically. And when I talk of this evidence-based case, the art, I will be referring to the case record guidelines. Now, many people they have queries regarding case record guidelines. So whether these guidelines aptly apply to homeopathic case taking or not, we'll look into that. So let us start. For a case, every bit of information is important when we talk of scientific publication. So it is the completeness which is important. The completeness with which a case is written, the completeness with which a case is presented, the completeness with which a case is understood. So this information, every bit of information is important. And this is what we are going to stress upon today. Now, case reports are defined as the scientific documentation of a single clinical observation and have a time-honored and rich tradition in medicine and scientific publication. Now, let us go through one by one. These are the scientific documents. So they carry two things, the documentation and the scientificity. The documentation can be non-scientific also. For example, if you're sharing any case on a social media or you're sharing in a group or on WhatsApp, so this can be a documented case. But when it comes with a scientificity, it becomes the scientific documentation. And yes, it refers to a single clinical observation, which has the tradition in medicine and scientific publication. Now, two things we are joining together, the medicine and scientific publication. It means it will be used in our clinics, in our medicine, and it will be used in the scientific publications, means presentation. Moving further, regarding the case records, there are certain gaps which I found it interesting. For example, there has been a boom to publish the case reports. That is interest. We all want to do it. We all want to have our case records being presented, being cited everywhere. But at the same time, majority of us, the population, does not publish it very often. So we may be seeing 100 cases in a day. We may be seeing millions of cases in a year or in a lifetime, but we do not report these cases. So there is a gap between the interest and there is lack of interest. So it means it's a published data and the data. You have the data, but that is not in the published form. So what exactly the need of R is? It's the motivation, it's the guidelines, it is the implementation, and it is the persistency. So all these four areas are equally important when we talk of case reports. We should have motivation. Yes, I see patients, I want to get them published. But to publish, I need to have the guidelines. I do have the guidelines. But how to implement these guidelines to convert my motivation into a published data? And yes, persistency. How often, how frequent I publish my cases. So we'll see all these areas of interest today in our case taking in homeopathy. Why case is important? Because, yes, of teaching purpose, common, uncommon, rare cases. If Hahnemann would not have published or reported his cases, we would not have gone through his concept of common, uncommon, and rare symptoms. So obviously, when you take a case, you can differentiate, you can teach yourself what is common, what is uncommon, what is rare. Of research purpose, evidence-based homeopathy. We all talk of evidence-based homeopathy, but how to convert that evidence-based talking into an evidence-based reporting? And then we talk of cognition-based homeopathy, research question generation, outcome assessment, validity. All these modalities we often talk of, but we never go through their depth to publish the cases. And yes, for improving the clinical practice, because it gives us an insight. The more cases you study, the more cases you treat, the more cases you publish, you are actually improving your clinical practice. Because if we are writing a case in a well planned manner, other people will also learn from it. So, case report is a win win situation. You are treating a case at your clinic, it's a good thing for you. You are understanding that case, it's a good thing for teaching for others also. You are reporting a case, you are publishing a case, you're presenting a case, it is of importance to others to learn from your experience. So let's move forward about what exactly is the problem then. We all want to publish cases, we all want to have our cases as the golden cases in presentations and seminars and here and there. But what exactly the problem then? The before going into actual problems, the inherent problem is the tall claims. With cases, people they want to have a tall claim about homeopathy that yes, we can cure this, we can cure that, we can cure incurable cases. So basically, these tall claims are problem, which gives hindrance for publishing these case reports into a reputed journal. So, in scientificity, in scientific methods, the tall claims have no value. The claims should be evidence based, the claims should be logical, the claims should be directional. So, if you're claiming tall in your cases and getting them published or presented somewhere, you're subjected for rejection. Then statements have little value. If I am speaking something, yes, people they might agree, they don't agree, they could have agreed because it's a statement, because I have said that. But homeopathy or a science does not go with the statements. Statements can be deceptive. Now, if we add one evidence-based criteria, that is the recorded statement, they have value. So you're getting a point. From one aspect, from the tall claims to the statement to the recorded statement, the level of confidence of science in you increases. Because if you're talking claim, people or the science would reject you. You have statement, you would be listened to. You would, if you have recorded statement, they have value. But a well-written case are accepted and respected everywhere. If you can get one case published in a peer-reviewed or a scholarly journal. Now, I'm not talking here about the journals, the common journals, or I'm talking about the peer-reviewed journals. So if you can get one case published in peer-reviewed or the scholarly journal, it would be respected and accepted in the society as a whole. So whatever the mode of treatment you have adopted in that case, it would be respected. Now the question comes, the students ask me, or many people, they ask each other, what constitutes a good case record? Is it the evidence-based nature? Is it the presentation? Is it the language style or something else? I have cured a case, so should I be given reward for curing that case? Or the case was simple, but I presented it in a well manner. So is that the criteria for a good case record? Or I have written that case in a very flowery language, in a very elite language, so that it should be accepted because the language is good. So what exactly a good case record constituents? The evidence-based nature, the presentation, or the language style? And is there any difference between a good case record and a scientific case record? Because people, they keep on sharing their cases on social media, and people, they publish their cases in peer-reviewed journals also. So which one is good? Or is there any difference between the good case record and a scientific case record? You can leave your comments in the comment section, and I would love to have a discussion at the end of this webinar about a good case record and a peer-reviewed publication, a scientific case record to be precise. Now, all these questions at one side, because the questions I put forth would constitute a good discussion at the end. Now we are moving to the art of writing a case record. We are perfect in taking a case because for years together we were taught about case record, case taking, aphorisms, how to write a case, take a blank paper, write everything you listen from a patient, process that, analysis, evaluation, repertorization, miasmatic analysis, prescription, second prescription, first prescription. All these things are important. But what exactly the art of writing a case record is? Because taking a case and writing a case are two different things. We may be very good in taking a case record. We may be very good in eliciting the Mender journals and repertorization and processing the case and evaluating the case. But when it comes to writing a case, many of us, or I would say majority of us, we will give a second thought. How to write that case, how to present that case. And before proceeding further into this, the art is something which we learn and master over the time. It is not a cut short phenomenon. It is not like that I'm going to teach you today the art of writing case and you would be a master in this art, because it is what we learn over the time, what we master over the time. And we are taught that a well taken case constitutes winning the half battle. As I said, we may be very good in taking the case, but we may not be very good in writing that case. And the guidelines for taking the case, as endorsed by Master Henneman, they can be referred to aphorism 83 to 104. Every one of us has read these aphorisms about the guidelines of case taking. So where the problem lies? Is our case sheet an evidence-based case record? If no, what's the difference? And the later involves much work and constitutes completing case in every respect. So here comes the challenges of a clinic, of converting a case into a case record, converting a prescription sheet into a evidence-based case presentation. I hope you will enjoy the presentation further. A good case follows the ethics of scientific methodology. In this one slide, we can cover the whole scientific methodology in a snapshot, and it follows the MRAD pattern: the introduction, the material and methods, results, analysis, discussion, and conclusion. So like every other instrumentation of research methodology, the scientific methodology, the case records follows these only. For example, a patient comes to you of, let's say, PCOS, polycystic ovarian disease, polycystic ovarian syndrome to be precise. So what exactly in your mind at that PCOS is? First, you would be recalling your baseline education in PCOS, because if you are committing a patient that yes, I do treat PCOS, you should have that background knowledge refreshed in your mind about the PCOS. And you would be recalling your homeopathic education at that point of time, that what exactly was the tools to take a good case. If I'm taking a case on a regular basis, I would be very well versed. I would be very confident that I would be taking this case in this manner, and guiding that case according to my way of prescribing. So that's an introduction. So we all do that introduction in back of our mind. It is not something we take something from this end or that end, or consult books before we see the patient. No, that introduction, that baseline education, why we are treating this case, can we treat this case? For example, if some um, incurable case comes to you, so you know that at that point only you know your limitation. But to help the patient to improve quality of life, to reduce the recurrences, to reduce the progression of the disease, you will take that case. So that introduction is very clear in your mind. Then comes material and methods, how you will process in that case. Yes, we'll take a case. Now the art of case taking may be different for different people. It may be very quick keynote prescription for you because of your busy schedule in your OPD. It may be a long, exhausting case taking because you have given a time and an appointment to the patient for half an hour, for 1 hour, and you will be taking the whole case. You may follow the Boger's style, you may follow Kent style, you may follow some other style of taking the case or processing the case. So, what material and method constitutes is the art of case taking, analysis, evaluation, and prescribing. We all do this thing, and in scientific methods we call it as material and methods. So what you do in your clinic, and yes, what results you have got. Now the results, they may vary from each patient, for acute diseases, for chronic diseases, for recurrent tendencies. So what exactly the results were, and depending on the results you would be working upon your first prescription, your second prescription, your follow-up, and analysis. Now this analysis is somewhat we will learn for whole of our life, because we would be analyzing, okay, fine, this case came to me, the case was cured, the case was very challenging case, I learned a lot, these were the inferences, these were the remedies I have gathered for the past 10 years. I've gathered the information and experience that these group of remedies, they work good in this case. That is basically analysis. But what we lack is the discussion and conclusion. Many times we do discuss with our peers, with our colleagues, with our students, with our juniors, seniors at conferences. But how frequently we discuss these kind of cases? How frequently we come to conclusion that yes, my way of prescribing or my methodology is at par with the scientific methodology. I may be doing wrong at certain point of time. So I will discuss only when I am a failure in a case, or when I got too high success in a case. In both the scenario, I will discuss, I will make conclusions with other people, maybe a chat during a high tea party or in a conference or writing an email to our senior. So we follow this IMRA. The need of our is to strengthen the D part, the discussion and the conclusion. Now, important points to remember. We do not then process each and every case of our practice. This is a challenge. This is a challenge which we all agree that if I am seeing 20 patients a day, if I'm seeing 50 patients a day, it is not always possible to publish each and every case. It is not always to discuss each and every case. It is not always feasible to process each and every case for a presentation or a seminar. So what we do, we select only well-rated cases. We only select well-written cases. We only select success stories and very rare failures also. And because many of the physicians, they do discuss about the failures. So we select well-rated. Well-rated because we know we have taken a case, maybe a short case, a long case, a well-written case. We have treated that case. That case responded well. Out of those well-treated cases, some of the cases were well written, and because of the success stories, we decided to publish them in a journal. We decided to present them in a seminar. So, therefore, the case record chosen for publication or presentation demands completeness and innovation, because not every case is fulfilled completely in terms of the bit of information what we talk. So, what we do, We only choose the completeness and innovation. So we will working on this because every one of us suffered from selection bias, and this is a very in, uh, inherent human tendency to have selection bias. It is nothing wrong, but out of that, if it is complete, if it is innovated, we'll present that. Now, presenting a case or writing a case, what I give examples always, it's the innovative clinical questions derivation. And this derivation is basically from area of choice, area of interest, observed phenomena, and area of uncertainty. If you have an area of choice, you will work in that area. If you have area of interest, you will work well in that area. If some phenomena you have observed which is different from other, it would be of keen interest to you. And yes, of uncertainty, why it happens, how it happens, what happened when we give the remedy. So if these things are fulfilled, I know our clinical quotient will convert that case or case series into published case series, because we know that there is something of interest, there is something of uncertainty, there is something of unusual observed phenomena. For example, how many of us they have presented cases of headache in our practice somewhere? No, because we consider that headache is one of the common clinical condition, or maybe a recurrent cough and cold, or maybe simple flu, simple cough and cold, because these are routine cases. We see always, we see plenty of these cases every day, and we never bother them to present, because why to present? These are acute cases. But if some challenging case comes where a post-operative patient on chemotherapy or a post-radioactive therapy patient performing well with homeopathy, because that is of something of interest. So that innovation is something which is warranted for that clinical question. So a good clinical or research question always meet the final criteria. It should be feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, relevant. I'm going to jot down all these points in the end. Please be connected that these final criteria applies in our clinical practice also. Whether the case we are saying it's feasible, it is interesting, it is novel, it is ethical, it is relevant. We may be experimenting too highly with the patient, which may not go with the ethics. Leave that. We must have seen many physicians asking patients to stop their tuberculosis medicine, and it happens very common in every stream of medicine. If they are if they are going for another treatment, that is not ethical. That is against ethics. You cannot publish that case. You are working on a cancer model or a chronic model, PCOS, depression in elderly, that is novel. You're working on learning disabilities in children, that is novel, that is interesting, feasible. If the patient comes to me in the clinic and if I can treat that patient in a feasible manner, that is important, because that has relevance as a public health question in the society. So this finer criteria, if you can apply in your cases, I'm sure you can publish those cases very well, and these would be respected and accepted everywhere. Now, is a case record part of clinical research? If yes, how? I would like to know your views on this. Is case record part of clinical research? Because whenever I talk to anyone, people they say that if we are writing a case record, it's a part of clinical research that won't be accepted, that would be rejected because it would be liable for ethical reviews, the acceptance, this, that. So whether case record a part of clinical research, you can drop in your views in the chat box. I would, it would be very interesting to learn. Now, there's only a thin line difference between the same. There is a difference and there's a thin line. What that thin line may be. Clinical research is different from clinical practice. Yes, we all agree. In clinical practice, we use established treatments, while in clinical research, we collect evidence to establish treatments. I'll give you an example, a very simple example on this. If I claim that a patient came to me with headache and I gave Natramur because I read in Materia Medica that Natramur is one of the good remedy for headache, for that kind of headache, and the patient came to me with consent that I want to take treatment for my headache and the character of headache is like this, and I prescribe Natramur. So what I'm doing, I'm using an established treatment in my practice for that patient. And for example, at the other moment in time, I flip the question that whosoever comes to me with with a headache, I would be giving them Natramur to see whether Natramur actually works in that case or not. So what I did, I decided to collect evidence to establish a treatment. So if I'm giving Natramur for a headache in a clinic, that is clinical practice. But if I want to see whether Natramur works in a headache case, that is clinical research. So when it comes to experimentation, that is clinical research. But but when we report case records, they are kind of clinical research, but without experimentation. So we are all allowed to publish those case records in peer-reviewed journal only with the consent of the patient. There is no ethical clearance required from a body to obtain, because this is the most challenging part that people they struck upon, whether we can publish that case in a peer-reviewed journal because we don't have any ethical clearance. But many of the peer-reviewed journals nowadays, they let you publish those cases if your cases has consent, written consent from the patient. So you follow me? Now, coming important factors while writing a case. Now, this is not the conventional mode of teaching I'm presenting today. It is something somewhat different, but all the points they relate to the classical case taking and case reporting. So, what are the important factors? The important factors are endpoint, objectives, and outcome measures. Yes, endpoints, objectives, outcome measures. These sounds very heavy words, very scientific words related to scientific methodology, but these are very simple. These are very logical objectives. What you want to see in that case, what your objective is, why you have taken that case, why you let patients enter into your chamber, why you took the case, because your objective is either to cure, to palliate, to relieve, to manage. So your objective was one of the four objectives, inherent objectives of homeopathy: to cure, to palliate, to relieve, to manage, and according to the stage and state of the disease. We have read in the organ about the stage of the disease, the staging of the disease, the staging of the patient, the knowledge of disease. This knowledge of disease gives us insight about the objectives, what our objective with the patient is. If that is clear, you know what the outcome measures you are going to adopt. For example, if now we have talked of the knowledge of disease, my objective is to reduce the high blood sugar levels of a known case of diabetic patient, along with the other homeopathy aspects about giving him relief, taking his mentals. But ultimately, the purpose of the case taking from mental point of view, from physical point of view, from psychological point of view, my objective is to reduce the blood sugar level with which a patient is reporting me. So what my outcome measures would be: the blood sugar level, the glycated hemoglobin, the HbA1c levels. So as per my objectives, my outcome measures would be decided in a scientific way. Now, taking another example, the objective would be to reduce the headache. The outcome measures would be patient reported relief, patient statement that yes, doctor, my headache is better after your medication. Yes, doctor, my headache is better after your case taking. Because the objective was to relieve the headache, to relieve the symptoms. If the objective is to relieve the symptoms as well as to reduce the higher titers of any outcome measure indices in a patient, for example, the high TSH, your objective would be to give a symptomatic relief to the patient and to reduce the TSH to the normal level. So is that clear? These two things we follow very frequently in our clinical practice. We have a defined objective because we know the type of disease with which the patient is suffering, and we know the outcome measures of that. Now endpoint is a little tricky. Why? Because we usually don't follow these endpoint very seriously. The patient is under treatment. We may keep on lingering for a few months to few years to few decades also, because the patient keeps on coming to us for their well-being. That is okay. This is where the clinical research and clinical practice varies. In clinical research, the endpoint is defined. For example, I would be stopping treatment of a patient till the TSH comes to normal or till 6 months. So I have defined the endpoint. By that time, it should come under normal. Otherwise, I will not treat the patient. I will stop the treatment or refer to the patient or withdraw from my study. So that endpoint is basically which defines this clinical research into clinical practice. In clinical practice, we don't have defined endpoints, but when we talk of writing a case record, we must have those endpoints, because if you're going to submit a case to a peer-reviewed journal, they're going to ask for how many months you treated that patient, and you have to mention there that this patient was treated for these many months or these many weeks under my treatment. This is a meme I found online. The picture credits to Google. The person says, good news, we got all 57 fingerprints at the scene and made a match to each one. But the bad news is that we are supposed to looking for a dog. This is what we do sometimes. We have totality of symptoms of all common symptoms of all pathological, nosological symptoms, and number of symptoms with us. But we lack that characteristic symptoms. We lack that set of characteristic symptoms which define homeopathy, which differentiate homeopathy from other sciences. And this is where a good case record stands. A well taken case, a well presented case, a well treated case. Now, the well treatment would be from those characteristic symptoms, maybe common symptom, maybe peculiar symptom, maybe uncommon symptom, but the characteristic symptoms. So, we may be looking at hundreds of symptoms in a patient, we may be ignoring few characteristic symptoms. Those are your objectives, those are your outcome measures, and those are your endpoints. Now, the outcome measure, because we talk, I'll quickly go through. It's a measure of quality of a medical care, a standard against which with the end results is assessed. For example, the glycated hemoglobin for diabetes, quality of life for depression, assessment tools for ADHDs. So we may quantify them as subjective and objective. Patient may come with a symptom to us, and that may come with a report to us. So he may be saying my TSH is high, or I have a headache. In headache, all the indices may be normal. All the things may be normal, but he have that subjective feeling. So these outcome measures can be subjective and objective. Now this is the beauty of homeopathy, that we do consider both outcomes. But in conventional system of medicine, the objective outcomes are given prime importance, leaving aside the subjective. Endpoint we have discussed the point marking the completion, where we will stop our treatment for reporting purpose. Now we have one incomplete picture. And to complete that picture, we have methodology, proper language, and guidelines to make that picture complete. So we have one incomplete picture, we have all symptoms, we have case, we have everything in our clinic. So when we apply this methodology, when we apply this proper language, and when we apply these guidelines, this picture is ready to be presented in a peer-reviewed journal that is a good written case record. Now, moving further about the guidelines, what case record guidelines means, these are the homeopathic case, clinical case reports, the development of a supplement that is home case, the care clinical case report guidelines for making a case a better case. These guidelines were published a couple of years back, and these collated all the important criteria from homeopathy which should be included in a case to make it a better case. So we have a well-treated case in our clinic, but as I said, that may not be a well-written case because of the methodology. Now, why these guidelines? Compare these guidelines with the Hahnemann's methodology. They help us to write a case in a better way. Like Hahnemann said, you should have guidelines, which is aphorisms 83 to 104, so that you can write your case in a better way. You should not be diverging here and there while writing a case. To improve the quality of the case. For example, we know it all better. More cases we take, more number of years in our practice, we improvise in cases. We improvise in dealing with the cases because of our experience, our intuition, our experimentation, to improve the art of writing an evidence-based case report. Now, as we earlier discussed, that not every case can be presented or converted into a well-written case. Only well-selected, well-written, well-treated success stories. So how to convert those success stories into an evidence-based case report? These guidelines will tell you. To promote accurate and methodical reporting. Homeopathy is being attacked here and there from all nook and corner of the world for evidence-based report. Our claims won't solve a purpose unless these are reported in a methodical way. They would be cited, and once they are cited, it actually promotes an accurate reporting. And to be considered for publication, the case should follow care guidelines. And if you can abide with the homeopathic guidelines, the chances of rejections are lessened. Now I'm citing few items from the case record guidelines. The type of homeopathy, the individualized, the formula, single or multi-constituents, the isopathy. Now, the common misconception about homeopathy that we can only publish individualized or constitutional single remedy cases. There are many journals all over the world, many peer-reviewed journals, those who publish the formula, maybe a single or multi-constituents, they publish case reports, they published isopathy, because it is a type of homeopathy according to the scientific methodology. These are being published. Whether you want to get it published or not, that may depend on the type of homeopathy you follow. But yes, it is being published. And the medication, the nomenclature, the manufacturer, the dose, repetition, galenic form. For example, if we write 200 only, what that 200 means. So whether that 200 should be written as 200 CH, 200X. So all these small things you should be taking care of when writing a case report, to nomenclate everything you write in a case. The consultation, the clinical history details, the homeopathic symptoms used for decisions. Now, your case may be having hundreds of symptoms, n number of common symptom, but what symptom you used for the decision, that is learning part. That is learning from homeopathic point of view. Decision, because this is where the learning would come. Teaching, experience. This decision, the symptom used for decisions, in nutshell, in homeopathy, if I talk, the characteristic symptoms. So these guidelines are nothing different but the adaptation of the homeopathic consultation, the homeopathic case taking process, and the follow-up and outcomes. Possible casual attribution of changes explicitly assessed or discussed. The casual attribution, what, when, and how. So this is what? This is second prescription. This is follow-up. As it is said, the first prescription may be very easy, the follow-up is very difficult. So this follow-up, this casual attribution of changes, the second prescription is a challenge. And if you are a master in that, people will listen to you. The objective evidence, if applicable and if available. What objective evidences were there? Whether it was TSH or it was the patient well-being. The occurrences of homeopathic aggravation, which is a very good aspect of homeopathy. So this homeopathic aspect. So what these guidelines are basically doing, these guidelines are basically collating all the homeopathic concepts at one place in a methodical way. Moving further, there are some optional items which you can put in your case, that is the consultation, whether the individualized symptoms were reported or not, the homeopathic prescription, the provision of repertorization. Now let me tell you, repertorization is not important in each and every case. If you have treated a case because of your knowledge of materia medica, it is bound to be accepted. But what always we do, we provide a repertorization sheet, the cooked up repertorization. Whether we have done repertorization or not, we always report this repertorization. This is not at all necessary. It is an optional item. Follow-up and outcomes. Assessment disease evolution in accordance with the homeopathic principle, herring law. You may or may not report. If you have not observed this herring law in your case, you may not report it. The prescription strategy, the totality of symptom, the keynote, a sense, etiology, etc. These are optional when they are present. And individual remedy related symptoms are identified and analyzed. So these are the things which the common make mistake of. Individual remedy related symptom. If you are reporting a case, or if you're reporting a case series, for example 10 cases at one place, so you may not be giving each and every symptom of that remedy, but what you would be giving, you would be giving the symptoms used for decision. This is important. Basically the symptoms used for making decision, not every symptom you write in that case making it a voluminous 5,000 word case for a case report guidelines. No, it is not necessary. Necessity is the actual information. Now it gives you a checklist. You can compare this checklist with your case and keep on improving your case writing. For example, the title, the words case report should be in the title, along with what is of greatest interest in this case. Now those who have recently joined, we discussed of the final criteria, the interest of the case, the completeness, the innovation of the case. So what is of greatest interest? The case report, a case report on alleviating symptoms of postpartum depression. That can be a good title. Yes. The keywords elements of the case is 2 to 5 keywords: depression, homeopathy, postpartum. These case keywords, they're basically important. They give a snapshot of your case in one go. Abstract. So when you write an abstract, introduction, what is unique about this case? What does it add to the medical literature? Would you be reporting a common cold for a case record or for presenting somewhere? No, until unless it has some very relevant information, for example, the influenza or any epidemic or pandemic. But a common cold, usually we don't report because we know that it is some, there's nothing uniqueness in this. But yes, we would like to report a case of cancer and how the cancer is being treated in the conventional medicine and how it is being treated and reported in homeopathy. The main symptoms of the patient and the important clinical finding. Now, this is what we learn as homeopathy, the main symptoms of the patient, the important clinical findings. So, this is an amalgamation of these two. So, this is basically art and science. So, you can compare the checklist with your case and see whether it is solving the purpose or not. So, checklist, compare with your case. So, main diagnosis, therapeutic intervention and outcomes. Diagnosis, what you are treating. So this is diagnosis of the patient, this is diagnosis of the disease. What interventions you gave to the patient or the patient took, and what was the outcome, what was the learning part, and what are the main takeaway lessons from this case. Because whatever you are going to report, that should have a takeaway message, a takeaway lesson. What exactly you did, why it should be considered as an experience for others, what others should learn from this, why they should refer back to me for that case because of that takeaway lesson, takeaway message, the conclusion. When you write a elaborate case, the introduction refers to the brief background summary of the case, referring to the relevant medical literature. And the patient information, the demographic information such as age, gender, ethnicity, occupation, this is given in all aphorisms. The mode of living of the patient, how the patient lives, how the patient behaves, what are the main symptoms of the patient, their chief complaints, their medical, family, and psychosocial history, including comorbidities and relevant genetic information, the past history, the tendency. So it is all homeopathic. Past interventions and their outcomes. What is this? It refers to suppressions. So as you can see, all these things, they refer to 83 to 104, how the case should be written. Moving to clinical findings, the relevant physical examination, the clinical history details, the homeopathic symptom used for decision as we talk, that these symptoms are decision, the characteristic symptoms, the timeline related to your diagnosis and interventions, the diagnostic assessment, the diagnostic challenges, the diagnostic reasoning, and the prognostic characteristics. All these things important from learning point of view because and that way you would be deciding about the usability of homeopathy in that condition, the effectiveness of homeopathy in that particular condition, because if the diagnosis is clear, if the challenges are clear, it paves paths for others to report the case. For example, I'll tell you an example. In 2010 I published a case report on endometrial polyp. At that point of time, I could not find a single homeopathic literature referring to the treatment of endometrial polyp. So it was basically a diagnostic challenge. What I could find some studies in allopathy, they were reported, but in homeopathic, I could not find any study, reported study. People may have treated hundreds of cases of endometrial polyp, but I could not find any reported study of endometrial polyp. But recently, a month back, I was very happy to found that one of the other authors in homeopathy from West Bengal, they have now published a case report on endometrial polyp. So it took whole 9 years to publish two case reports on endometrial polyp. So this is what diagnostic challenge is. The diagnostic reasoning is. But now, since they have published, might be people would be interested, they will find two references in the endometrial polyp, and this will pave path for them to publish more cases in endometrial polyp. Coming to therapeutic intervention, the type of intervention, it was a pharmacological, it was a surgical, it was preventive, it was self-care. Because in not all study you give homeopathy alone. There may be some add-on therapies. So in this, the patient was treating some other pharmacological, so you give homeopathy as add-on. It was a surgical post-operative case. It was a preventive case for dengue, chikungunya, and other things. The patient consulted to you. The type of homeopathy, the individualized, single or multi-constituents, isopathy, the nomenclature, the potency, the galenic form, 200 watt, is it 200x or 200C or 200CH. The administration of intervention such as dosage, strength and duration, how many doses you give. This is important because nowadays we are learning towards dose and effect theory. Was it a single dose that created effect, or was the multiple doses that they created the effect? And what was the change in intervention? Change in intervention means second prescription. The follow-ups, the clinician and patient assessed outcomes, important follow-up test results. So as you can see, all these things you have in your case with you, but these are not completed to a certain extent. So if you follow these guidelines, you can take things one by one, complete them, so you have a good case record. And yes, moving further for the adverse events, the objective evidence, the occurrence of homeopathic aggravation, the possible casual attribution of changes. Coming to discussion part, now why we leave this discussion part always? Because we have treated a case, the case went well, it got cured, it got relieved, this and that. But what was the strength and limitations in the management of this case? What was the learning point? How we arrived at that potency? Whether other people have used those potencies or remedies or not, that is of interest. And whether it follows the other relevant medical literatures or not. If a certain condition X is being relieved or treated in few weeks, whether you reported a case lingering that for few months, is that important? I don't know. So that discussion should be of relevant medical literature, whether it was relevant or not, whether it was right or it was wrong. The rationale for conclusion: have you done a miracle? Because miracles, they are not very accepted in scientific world. So whether it was an evidence-based case, I have not seen any miracles being published in a peer-reviewed journal, be it homeopathic. I have not seen any miracle. But yes, I've seen evidence-based cases being published. So what was the main takeaway message? Was it something out of this world, the tall claim, or not? And did the patient share his or her perspective or experience? Now this is important, what we lack, the patient's perspective. Did the patient share? Yes or no? Because that constitutes homeopathy. The TSH is normal, the patient is not feeling normal till date. And yes, in the end, informed consent. Did the patient give informed consent? Please provide if requested. So there's a difference between the clinical research, as we discussed earlier, that in clinical research and in case reports. In clinical research, you need ethical clearance. But in case report, you need consent. So if you have that consent, and if you have that consent with a well-written case record, it should be published. So again, the question we discussed, that social media sharing of case is allowed or not. Does this sharing at par with a peer-reviewed or journal publication? I leave this question to you because many times we also share many evidence-based cases, but those are not cases. I would say those are snapshots we discuss. If the case is a well-written case, a well-reported case, it has a valuable place in a peer-reviewed journal. You may get in journal publications and social media, there's no harm, but that should also comply with the standards of reporting. Not everything can be shared, or not everything should be shared on social media. Coming to end of this webinar, there's a need to improve the quality of cases taken, preserved, presented, and published. So we may be like we discussed, we may be taking a very good case, but whether that is preserved, whether that is presented, and whether that is published in a well mannered form or not. And to achieve this, we need to adopt uniform guidelines. And the aim of these guidelines must be to preserve the sanctity of the art of case taking, treatment, and follow up. At no point of time, these guidelines are to deviate us from the homeopathy. So these guidelines are basically should be appended with homeopathy. They should not deviate us. Deviation should not be there. They basically assist us in achieving the art, in improvement of art, case taking, treatment, and follow up. In nutshell, we need to work upon the quality improvement. And in the end, stick to the rules of case taking with the logic and perceptions. Process the case with two aspects in mind, the homeopathic case and the nosological case. Each information must be complete in every aspect with an understandable logic. A complete description must be provided related to medicine, dose, and potency used, with special emphasis on why this remedy. And try to establish the correlation between the two aspects of case taking. And yes, follow the guidelines of writing homeopathic case reports. This is in a nutshell my perception about writing a case and following the guidelines. And if you want the copy of these case record guidelines for education purposes only, you can write an email to me, that is email@sauravarora.com. I would be happy to share the copy of these case record guidelines, which are not available on Google yet, because I believe arranging every bit of information methodically is scientific methods. Thank you so much for your patient listening. This is in a nutshell about me. I'm Dr. Saurav Arora, and I'm into practice since close to 13 years now. And through certain initiatives like the initiative to promote research in homeopathy, the homeopathy mathematica tips, I'm contributing my part towards the development and strengthening homeopathy from every point of view. And I would request you to join these tips, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or visit my website for updates on homeopathy and research updates. And I would love to receive your negative feedback also for this presentation. This webinar may not be of that quality webinar, but yes, I tried to give one webinar on Facebook Live. And maybe in future, the guidelines would be adopted, and I would love to work on a live case according to these guidelines. So I will try my best to come with a live case, come with a definitive or concluding case adopting these guidelines, and surely we will work upon that. For that, keep connected, and thank you so much. I would love to receive your feedback and comments. Do share this if you find interesting. Thank you.